Welcome to the Full Moon TV Buff, episode 10. We're going to discuss the final two seasons of Being Human from 2012 through 2013. I watched this on Amazon Prime, and I had stopped watching this show by the time these seasons originally came out, so this is my first time watching these two. As always, we start with the prominent crew and cast. You can also find links to a more complete credit list in the show notes. The showrunner is Toby Whithouse. Prominent directors include Philip John and Daniel O'Hara. Prominent writers include Toby Whithouse and Jamie Matheson. Creature effect designs were by Neil Gorton, Bob Mayer, and Millennium Effects. Special effects supervisor was Mark Turner. I talked about Toby Whithouse, Neil Gorton, Bob Mayer, and Mark Turner when I covered the first three seasons. Before entering television and film, Philip John was a bass player with DIY punk band Reptile Ranch. He co-founded Z Block Records. He's known for his work on prestigious period dramas. He directed episodes across 3 seasons of Downton Abbey and 4 episodes of Outlander. He directed Marvel's Iron Fist, Runaways, and Cloak and Dagger. John made his feature film directorial debut with Moondogs. Daniel O'Hara directed factual television before writing and directing 2 award-winning short films. This led to TV directing on The Clinic and Padawakery. 2 Inspector George Gently episodes helped him break into the UK industry, where he gained attention for his work on cult hits Skins and Being Human. His filmography also includes Doctor Who, Victoria, Houdini and Doyle, Brassic, and Safe. Jamie Matheson began as a stand-up comedian before transitioning into TV variety. He wrote for a number of UK science fiction TV shows, namely Being Human, Dirk Gently, and Doctor Who. Beyond television, Matheson wrote frequently asked questions about time travel. The cast includes Lenora Critchlow as Annie Sawyer, Michael Sosha as Tom McNair, Damian Maloney as Hal York, Kate Bracken as Alex Miller. She was recurring in season 4 and a regular in season 5. And Stephen Robertson as Dominic Rook. He was a guest in season 4 and a regular in season 5. We discussed Lenora Critchlow when we covered the first 3 seasons. Michael Sosha is the older brother of actress Lauren Sosha, star of the comedy drama Misfits. He broke through while in his late teens as the thuggish Harvey in the hit drama This Is England in 2006. He returned to that series several times. Other prominent British roles include The Aliens, D.I. Ray, and What It Feels Like for a Girl. Sosha also portrayed Will Scarlet on ABC's Once Upon a Time in Wonderland and Once Upon a Time. Damian Maloney's first television role was on Being Human. Other prominent shows include Ripper Street, Suspects, Game Face, and Brassic. Most recently, he headed the eagerly anticipated remake of Bergerac. Kate Bracken gained her fame on Being Human. Later in 2013, Bracken also appeared on Misfits. More recent notable projects included Calibre and Killing Eve. Stephen Robinson overcame severe dyslexia. His first major film role came alongside fellow Scottish actor James McAvoy in Inside I'm Dancing. He had a small part in Kingdom of Heaven. Robertson went on to numerous TV dramas like Luther, Being Human, and Utopia. He appeared in T2 Trainspotting. Robinson returned to his home in Shetland to film the TV series of the same name. Notable guest stars include Gina Bramhill as Eve, Andrew Gower as Cutler, Anthony Flanagan as Fergus, Louis Mahoney as Leo, Tamla Carey as Pearl, Mark Williams as Regis, James Lance as Kirby, Ellie Kendrick as Allison Larkin, Mark Gaddis as Mr. Snow, Colin Holt as Ian Crumb, Phil Davis as Captain Hatch, Toby Whithouse appears as Alistair Firth, and Hamza Jitua as Alan. Toby Whithouse also acts, and he did make a cameo in this show in addition to creating it. Gina Bramhill began her career in the movie Lotus Eaters. Her notable television credits include appearances in Endeavour, Mr. Selfridge, Sherlock, Black Mirror, Coronation Street, and Being Human. Andrew Gower's career began on TV. Being Human was an early breakthrough role. His most notable television work includes Outlander, Carnival Row, and Black Mirror. He also appeared on Midsummer's Murders. Beyond acting, Gower worked as a singer-songwriter and was part of the band Emerson. Anthony Flanagan is most widely known for his portrayal of policeman Tony in Channel 4's comedy drama series Shameless. Notable other work includes roles in Vincent, Cracker, Life on Mars, Foyle's War, All About George, Casualty, Holy City, The Bill, Spooks, Spooks Code 9, Doctor Who, Survivors, and Red Riding. Mark Williams first achieved widespread recognition as one of the central performers on the popular sketch show The Fast Show. His film career includes notable roles such as 101 Dalmatians, The Borrowers, and Shakespeare in Love. However, Williams became internationally well known playing Arthur Weasley in 7 of the Harry Potter films. Williams has made numerous TV appearances on Doctor Who, Red Dwarf, Merlin, and Midsummer Murders. Since 2013, Williams has starred as the titular character in the BBC series Father Brown, based on a G.K. Chesterton's stories about a Catholic priest who solves murders. Louis Mahoney was born in the Gambia, West Africa, before traveling to the UK to study medicine. He abandoned medicine for the stage. Mahoney became one of the first black actors to join the Royal Shakespeare Company in the 60s and built a prolific television career. His notable TV appearances included series such as Dixon of Dock Green, Z-Cars, Special Branch, Menace, Doctor Who, Quiller, Fawlty Towers, The Professionals, Miss Marple, Yes, Prime Minister, and Sea of Souls. His films included The Plague of the Zombies, Live and Let Die, Omen 3, The Final Conflict, Cry Freedom, Wondrous Oblivion, Shooting Dogs, and Captain Phillips. Kamala Carey starred in The Inbetweeners and its sequels. Being Human was her first TV gig. Carey is best known as Constance in the BBC television series The Musketeers. Other television credits include The First Team, Call the Midwife, and Cuckoo. James Lance is best known for an Emmy Award-nominated role as Trent Crim on Ted Lasso. His extensive British television career includes Absolutely Fabulous, Waiting for God, I'm Alan Partridge, Moving Wallpaper, Absolute Power, The Book Group, No Heroics, Midsummer Murders, and Teachers. Film work includes Marie Antoinette, Bronson, and Northern Soul. Ellie Kendrick is best known for playing the title role in The Diary of Anne Frank, Ivy Morris in the revived Upstairs Downstairs, and Mira Reed in Game of Thrones. Other TV appearances include Prime Suspect, The Final Act, and Misfits. Her film work includes An Education. Beyond acting, she does voices for many video games. Mark Gatiss first achieved recognition as one quarter of the award-winning comedy team, The League of Gentlemen, which he both wrote and appeared on screen as various characters. We've already heard Gatiss when he voiced a minor character in Wallace and Gromit, The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. TV appearances include Spaced, Nighty Night, Midsummer Murders, Game of Thrones, and Good Omens. Film appearances include Shaun of the Dead, A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and the last two Mission Impossible movies. His most famous collaboration came from co-creating the BBC series Sherlock with Stephen Moffat, in which he also portrayed Mycroft Holmes, Sherlock's older brother. He had a childhood passion for Doctor Who and wrote a variety of novels and audio plays for that IP. He has written and appeared in the modern continuation of that series. He's also a successful novelist, having written several books, including a biography of James Whale and several Lucifer Box novels. Colin Holt is probably best known for working with Ricky Gervais on Afterlife. He has guest TV roles include Ghosts, The Flat Share, Black Ops, Being Human, Almost Never, Nurse, and Murder in Successville. As a comedian, Holt is a regular performer on the London comedy circuit with actor stand-up comic Fergus Craig and the double act Colin and Fergus. We previously talked about Phil Davis when he appeared in Howling 5. Hamza Jitua got his start on Luther before appearing regularly on Combat Hospital. Other TV credits include Babylon, My Jihad, and The Thick of It. His film credits include The Showreel and I Don't Care. As a filmmaker, he produced and directed award-winning short films with his wife, Natalie Pereira. I do ultimately recommend these last two seasons, but with a catch. It is a new and different show. This isn't about characters struggling to stay human anymore. It's a show about the clash of cosmic supernatural forces. This is good. It's got the same budget and talented creative team. The production values remain top-notch. It's just not as great as the first three seasons because it doesn't feel as intimate. On top of that, while the werewolf stories of George and Nina were a huge part of the first three seasons, the future vampire war is the driving force of the last season, and then the devil is the driving force of the last one. The werewolves take a back seat. Now, the show drastically alters its stakes while maintaining the same basic premise. A vampire, a werewolf, and a ghost share a house. But they no longer really attempt to live normal human lives. They fight a supernatural war in the shadows to protect a single baby who might save humanity from the vampires. The fifth season makes a brief hint at returning to the core premise, but it doesn't take long before the literal devil shows up. However, I did enjoy both seasons. So now we're going to cover the core characters. Annie Sawyer is a ghost who's been through a lot. Her fiancé killed her. She missed her door to the afterlife and doesn't know if she'll get another chance. She's fiercely devoted to protecting baby Eve and her impromptu family. She is a little vain, and her greatest fear is letting everyone down. In the end, she enters heaven after saving the world. Tom McNair is a young werewolf. He demonstrates significantly more influence on his werewolf form, perhaps as a result of growing up as a lycanthrope. He has a disarming directness. He sounds lower class to my ear. A little research says it's a Northern English accent. He's a capable man of action. Initially, he loves killing vampires and needs little prompting to do so. But his interactions with Mitchell last season and Hal these seasons open up the possibility that some vampires might be good. They're not. He completely misses a normal human upbringing and feels the lack acutely. He's desperate to make something successful of his life. Al York is a buttoned-down vampire who seems to have OCD. He's a germaphobe. These traits appear to have helped him avoid feeding on humans for the last half-century. It's too messy. He wears an old-fashioned three-piece suit. Turns out he's one of the oldest vampires we've had on the show. He was a medieval lord. And, like every other vampire on the show, when he's on the blood sauce, he's a complete monster. Alex Miller is a forward young Scottish lady. She has the misfortune of falling into Hal's orbit while on holiday with her family. Cutler kills her, and she becomes a ghost. She's cared for her father and 4 brothers since her mom walked out on the family when she was 17. As a result, she's something of a tomboy. She is terrified of being alone. Nick Cutler is a devious vampire with a serious Machiavellian streak. He was something of a spineless coward of a solicitor in mortality, and even as a vampire, he has a disposition for getting others to do the dirty work. He plans to trick humanity into welcoming vampires by scaring them with werewolves. Oddly, he dies while attempting to kill baby Eve and destroy all vampires out of spite. Dominic Rook is a government bureaucrat managing a Men in Black type organization designed to keep humanity unaware of the supernatural world. They appear to mostly clean up after monster attacks and don't do much to actually combat the monsters. When the organization is defunded, it puts Rook into an ethical and moral downward spiral. He exemplifies the evil potential contained inside every bureaucrat who's working for the common good. Captain Hatch is the devil. You know, Satan, in the form of a crotchety, bitter canker of an old man. He's mean, spiteful, and so devious. So let's cover the synopsis. Eve of the war. We see a glimpse of the future, 2037 to be exact. We listen as the last bastion of humanity, New York, falls to the vampires. Back in 2012, there was a time jump. Nina gave birth to a baby. George killed Wyndham. Griffin ordered a hit on Nina. Griffin is the vanguard of the old one's old-school military plan to conquer the world. Tom desperately tries to prove himself useful enough to be invited to move into the B&B. He alerts George to an opportunity to take out Griffin, but it turns out to be a trap. While George and Tom are stuck in werewolf forms away from the house, a vampire named Fergus kidnaps the baby werewolf as a welcoming present for the old ones. Everyone is surprised when the baby is not a werewolf. Fergus forces George to give himself up by promising to release the baby. Of course, the vampires lied. The vampire historian, Regis, finds a prophecy that this baby will destroy all vampires. Griffin won't have that, so he's going to kill the baby. Tom and Annie get assistance from an outcast asthmatic vampire, Dewey, to stage a rescue. George literally forces his body to partially undergo the transformation to save his child. With Regis and Dewey's help, they rescue the baby and defeat Griffin. George names the baby Eve before dying as a consequence of this forced change. Finally, we realize she is the leader of the future human resistance. She has one of her soldiers kill her so that she can enter a door and kill herself as a baby? What? I'm confused. Well, sure, they'll sort this out. Meanwhile, Ghost Pearl, Werewolf Leo, and Vampire Hal live together in another location that feels like the past. Episode 2, Being Human, 1955. Pearl, Leo, and Hal travel to Barry in the hope that prophecy baby Eve can perform a miracle. Leo is dying, and he wants more time. Annie and Pearl passively aggressively clash over who is the better ghost and who has the better fashion sense. Vampire Cutler is conducting a focus group to expose werewolves to humans if the other vampires would stop eating the focus group members, that is. Annie fakes a healing ceremony that doesn't work. Annie offers to let the new trio move in, well, Hal and Pearl, after Leo passes away. Hal and Tom are sent on a mission to buy a ring for Leo. Tom and the pawn shop owner square off over a stuffed wolf's head. Annie figures out that Pearl loves Leo. Turns out that he loves her back. Leo dies, and Pearl goes through the double door with him, leaving Hal as the vampire in our new trio. Finally, it's revealed that the ghost of future Eve set all of this up in an attempt to get Hal to kill her past baby self. I'm still confused. Hal and Tom do not like each other at all. Episode 3, The Graveyard Shift. Hal and Cutler ran together as vampires back in the mid-19th century. Hal reluctantly works at a cafe with Tom. We find out Regis told the vampires that Eve is dead, but he's worried that that ruse won't last because the trio was in the same house in Barry. His fear is well-founded when Fergus spots Annie and Eve at the park. Hal's OCD and general misanthropy make him ill-suited to work at a cafe. He and Tom bet over who can get the next girl's phone number first, and she turns out to be the odd, death-obsessed goth regular. They don't get her number, but she manages to improve their relationship. Annie's determination to safeguard Eve drives her into an alliance with Regis, who's odd, even for vampires. The weird goth girl tries to pay for a cheeseburger with her poetry, which almost gets Hal to kill her, and I don't blame him. Fergus and 4 other vampires show up to kill Tom, and our heroes take them out. We find out Hal is an old one and a medieval lord. Regis warns Annie about a vampire with a burned arm. Regis and goth girl end up a couple. Episode 4, A Spectre Calls. Ghost Alfie Kirby, an eerily nice ghost who reminds me of Ned Flanders in attitude, if not in mannerism, claims to be sent by Nina to help the trio care for Eve. But he immediately starts undermining Annie, Tom, and Hal, sowing discord and distrust. Eve runs a temperature, so they get a pediatrician to make a house call. Really? Okay, I'll believe in vampires, ghosts, and werewolves before I believe in 21st century medical house calls. Tom and Hal pretend to be Eve's gay parents, poorly. Kirby kills the GP after he leaves. Kirby knows a lot of gory details about Hal's vampiric past, and he tries to blackmail Hal to get more time with Eve. Kirby finds out tomorrow is Tom's 21st birthday and intentionally pumps up Tom's hopes for a big surprise party, knowing just how much it will crush him because the others don't even know. Tom's never had a birthday celebration in his life. Hal gets curious as to who's covering up the Box Tunnel 20 massacre and begins investigating. When Tom is crushed by being ignored, he blows up. He and Hal come to blows. Tom heads out, gets drunk, and gets himself arrested. Kirby triggers Hal's OCD to make him appear a danger to Eve. Annie sends Hal away, which leaves her and Eve alone with Kirby. Cutler gets Tom released. Why? Okay. Now that Kirby's got Annie alone, he emotionally destroys her and reveals that he was a serial killer in his life. He humiliates Annie so completely that she vanishes, leaving Eve to his mercies. Turns out Ghost Eve provided all of the dirty info to Kirby and sent him to kill her infant self. Tom and Hal finally figure out Kirby has been winding them up. Kirby wastes way too much time monologuing about what a terrifying killer he was, allowing Annie to reform and ghost power Kirby back to the other side. Annie finally recognizes she has the worst taste in men. Cutler is behind the cover-up, and Hal has a burned arm. Oh, from last episode. Episode 5, Hold the Front Page. Teenage vampire Adam returns, now with Yvonne, his middle-aged school headmistress, lover in tow. Yvonne is odd and can somehow see Annie, despite not being a vampire or werewolf herself. Adam clues her in on the supernatural world and his vampiric state. She refuses to accept the truth in a manner that makes me suspicious. The paparazzi are trailing the scandal. Meanwhile, Cutler is staging fake werewolf kills in the forest. Yvonne appears in both Tom and Hal's dreams, ensorceling them. Tom has some very violent dreams. Tom figures out Yvonne is a succubus, and she doesn't even know it. Reporter Pete traps Cutler. Cutler kills him and escapes. Adam realizes he loves Yvonne for herself, and the pair head off to find happiness together, or hopefully something like it. Episode 6, Puppy Love. Tom runs into the cutest young female werewolf named Allison. There is a YouTube video of Tom changing into a werewolf from the vampire trap in the premiere. Allison found Tom to warn him. The pair are adorably dorky and cute as he teaches her how to fight vampires and she teaches him how to debate, and they fall in love. Cutler is moving forward with his plans to expose Tom as a werewolf. Cutler manages to trick Allison and Tom into helping him deal with interloper Golda, who's trying to horn in on the old one's glory. Annie accidentally kills an elderly gentleman named Emerus, who came around the house to complain about baby Eve's crying. Hal meets a charming young lady named Alex on vacation with her father and 4 brothers. She's into him, even if he's a little bit out of courting practice. Tom and Allison and Hal and Alex go on a double date. Hal almost turns on Alex. Tom makes Allison go since she can still have a fairly normal life with her family. When Annie gets Emerus his door, adult Eve comes through to converse with Annie directly. Episode 7, Making History. We learn Hal made Cutler a vampire. Hal killed Cutler's mortal wife to eradicate his humanity. Hal sets up a second date with Alex. The specter of Eve reveals a coming world holocaust to Annie. Eve explains the vampiric apocalypse starts tomorrow when the old ones arrive. We learn Tom died in a werewolf concentration camp. Annie dissolved of sorrow after burying so many family and friends. The biggest reveal of all is that Hal is one of the Old One's most ruthless commanders. The final reveal is that the completed prophecy is that Eve must die to save humanity. And Eve needs Annie to do it. Tom uses his newfound debating skills to temporarily avoid Cutler's Machiavellian plan. Cutler repays the old debt by knocking Hal off the wagon and killing Alex, who turns into a ghost. Cutler reveals his plan to a locked-up Hal. He locks Tom in a nightclub full of young people with cell phones and the internet on the night of a full moon. They expose werewolves to humanity, who he expects will then welcome the vampiric saviors / overlords. But Alex gets Hal free, and the pair prevent the massacre, even if they can't prevent the exposure. The Old Ones arrive. Episode 8, The War Child. Mr. Snow and the Old Ones arrive, unimpressed by their welcome. They confirm that Eve's death is what defeats the vampires. Tom constructs an improvised explosive device, something he's been threatening to do all season, and is confronted by the Old One's werewolf servant Milo, who convinces Tom that the Old Ones are the only ones who can and will protect Eve. Cutler narrowly escapes the Old One's vengeance and gruesomely forces himself into the B&B. Annie knows Eve must die, but she just can't let that happen. She telekinetically stakes Cutler. Mr. Snow offers Hal the rule of Britain after the world is conquered. Hal finds the will to refuse. Tom brings Eve to Mr. Snow on the condition that he, Tom, is the one who is allowed to protect her. Hal brings the bomb, but Mr. Snow mentally dominates him. Annie unleashes her psychic fury to rescue Eve, but upon meeting Mr. Snow, she finally accepts what has to happen. Alex gets Hal out, Milo gets Tom out, and Annie detonates the bomb, killing Mr. Snow, Eve, and all the rest of the Old Ones. Amidst the inferno, her door to the afterlife opens. She says goodbye to Eve and enters heaven. We meet Dominic Rook, a man who keeps secret things secret. Hal, Tom, and Alex are our new trio. Goes season 5. Episode 1, The Trinity. The trio makes a pact to avoid all supernatural entanglements in the future. Let's see how long that lasts. After recovering from blood withdrawal, Hal joins Tom in seeking work at the Very Grand Hotel, where the hiring manager immediately fixates on him. Rook approaches Hal with a proposal. Since Hal is a human sympathizer, Rook wants Hal to assume control of the vampires and use his authority as one of the last Old Ones to make the vampires docile. Hal tries to explain that it doesn't work that way. My estimation of Rook's intelligence just went down. Alex thinks getting her body to her family will let her pass over, but that doesn't work. Hal is forced to make a new vampire, a nebbish insurance salesman named Ian Cram, when he is hit by a car running away from Hal. Alex lets Cram go and is horrified to see him go full vampire. Oh, and Rook's MIB department gets funding cuts from the government. All of this is interspersed with backstory where we see Hal collaborate with a ghost and werewolf 90 years ago attempting to rid the world of the devil. It turns out the devil, trapped in a mortal madman's body, is hanging out at the Very Grand Hotel. Episode 2, Sticks and Rope. Hal and Tom clash over an Employee of the Month contest, hatched by Hatch, which seems pointless because the lecherous manager is infatuated with Hal. Hatch manipulates the boys until they engage in a food fight, which gets them both fired. Meanwhile, ghost child Oliver appears at the house. He's an insufferable little Victorian-era twat who blames himself for his sick brother's death. Alex manages to connect with the lad and help him open his door to the afterlife. Unfortunately, Oliver was the bait in a trap to allow the men with sticks and ropes to drag Alex to hell. She narrowly outwits them. In the end, Hatch monologues his master plan to the manager before he forces her to commit suicide. He needs a werewolf and a vampire to finish his rise to power, and he needs to get rid of any pesky ghosts. Episode 3, Pie and Prejudice. Tom meets a celebrity weatherman turned werewolf, Larry Chrysler. Larry is now something of a sad sack who is a bad motivational speaker. Larry agrees to teach Tom how to be a financial success, but in reality, he takes advantage of our young lycanthrope. Hal reluctantly introduces Alex to Lady Mary, a 250-year-old ghost who believes that she is Hal's last victim. Hal has let her think that she kept him clean all these years. She's been carrying a torch for Hal. In the end, each member of our trio realizes how much they truly need each other. Hal secretly strangles Larry to get rid of him and gets Rook to help clean up the body. Episode 4, The Greater Good. Rook temporarily turns responsibility for Bobby, an archive-dwelling werewolf, over to Tom, since power has been turned off at the facility. Rook is trying to secure alternative funding sources for the organization. Bobby is what we call neuroatypical. Tom's initial hostility lessens as the pair work together. Crumb has turned Rook's aide Alan into a vampire, and the pair are on a vampiric killing spree. Rook asks Hal to take care of the situation since he created Crumb. Hal chooses to try getting them clean. Hatch masterfully preys on Rook's fears of irrelevance to create a catastrophe. Rook traps Bobby in the basement of the hotel, where he transforms into a werewolf, threatening dozens of patrons. Hal and Alex distract Bobby long enough for Werewolf Tom to show up and protect everyone. In the end, Hatch sadly convinces Bobby to hang himself. Crump stakes Alan, consumes werewolf blood, and dies as well. Rook is well and truly under Hatch's control. Hal realizes all the craziness is wearing on his resolve. Hal's inner monster is getting close to the surface. Episode 5, No Care, All Responsibility. Rook rescues a young girl 15 years ago. Hal is drinking blood again today, but only out of bottles. Alex wants to address the sexual tension between her and Hal. Oh, and investigate the centuries-long rash of suicides centered on the Berry Grand. A young woman named Natasha hides out from a thug at the hotel. Tom is immediately smitten and offers her a job. Hal fights the urge to feed off her. Turns out Natasha is a tough cookie who knows all about vampires and offers to let Hal drink from her. We've watched this show long enough to know that this is going to end poorly. Turns out that all of this is a masterfully devious plan concocted by Hatch and Rook to drive a wedge between Hal and Tom, and it succeeds horrifyingly well. Natasha frames Hal for her own death. Tom is hunting Hal. The energy from their conflict powers Hatch. Ghost Natasha reveals the truth to Alex. Rook saved her all those years ago. Hatch and Rook mercilessly sacrificed her to achieve their goals. Of course, Hatch is using Rook. Episode 6, The Last Broadcast. Here we go. Series finale. The situation is not good. Hatch has ordered everyone in the Berry Grand to kill themselves and sets off dressed like a pimp. Alex is trapped in her own coffin and has to manifest and dig her way out. Hal is back on the villain's side and has converted the dozen patrons of a dive bar as his army. Tom rips through them like a hot knife through butter. But evil Hal has vampiric speed and strength on his side, plus centuries of experience. Hal versus Tom is an even fight. In the end, Alex shows up just before Tom stakes Hal to bring them up to speed on Hatch, who leaves an apocalypse level of death behind him as he moves through Berry Island. He plans to use the emergency broadcast system to whisper into the ear of millions of British citizens. Their simultaneous suicides will give him the power to raise the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. The ritual to thwart Hatch requires the willing sacrifice of our heroes, a price they claim to be willing to pay. In the confrontation, Hatch individually tempts the 3 friends with alternate realities where they each get their deepest desire. Hal never becomes a vampire. Alex didn't die. And Tom isn't a werewolf and is expecting a child with Allison. The devil does not play fair. It's heartbreaking to watch our heroes give up the lives they could have had to save a world that they'll never know. Back in the real world, however, the ritual goes awry when Alex drops and breaks the vial of mixed werewolf-vampire blood. Just as Hatch is about to command the audience to off themselves, Rook and his freshly reconstituted agency show up. Hatch is shot through the head. The day is saved, and our trio didn't have to die. But Hal is still evil, and Tom and Alex cannot let him loose onto the world. As much as they don't like it, they're going to have to kill him. Their tense standoff is interrupted by Rook. It turns out that the devil just jumped from Hatch to Rook. The devil tries to destroy them, but our heroes complete the ritual, returning the devil to his incorporeal form, at the cost of a human, vampire, werewolf, and ghost lives. However, what our heroes didn't know was that it was the supernatural halves of them that needed to die. All 3 wake up, finally, completely human. Season 4 expands the mythology of the show. The imminent threat of the Old One's arrival is a ticking clock. Eve is destined to be the war child, even if we don't fully understand what that means. The biggest mystery is why adult Eve wants to kill her infant self, at least for the whole first season. The resolution of that mystery has some interesting implications that we're going to talk about a little later. Despite the show firmly establishing the existence of an afterlife from the very first episode, and portraying what can only be called heaven and hell, it takes until the final season for the show to address the theological consequences of the premise by introducing the devil. Not a devil, the devil. In these final 2 seasons, the show gets restrained in showing us its effects budget. We do see both Tom and George transform in the premiere, but then we don't see another werewolf until Tom's transformation in the nightclub. Season 5 only gives us glimpses of the werewolves until we see Bobby transform in the hotel basement. The werewolf transformation sequences continue to be noteworthy for their brutal physicality, even if they are tending to be a little shorter this time around. Unlike many werewolf stories that use quick cuts or shadows, this show does continue to portray werewolf transformation as an agonizing, bone-breaking process, emphasizing the horror of the condition. The makeup and practical effects created by Neil Gorton and Millennium Effects create a visceral experience. On to werewolf lore. In the Being Human universe, werewolves transform during the single night of the proper full moon, cannot control their wolf forms, have no memories of what they do in wolf form, and the transformation is excruciatingly painful. The condition is transmitted through scratches or bites, but the typical werewolf attack is so violent and thorough that survivors have been rare. But in these last 2 seasons, lots more werewolves show up, although we typically don't get to see them transform. Werewolves and vampires are still natural enemies, continue to be, with werewolf blood being toxic to vampires. That's more of an issue these last 2 seasons. Vampires love to pick on lycos, as they call them, and kill them when they are stuck in their human form, but they're no match for a werewolf in their monstrous form. Silver continues to be completely absent from the lore. So let's talk about prophecy and time travel, the paradox of predestination. Prophecies and time travel create compelling storytelling combinations, especially when prophecies trigger the very futures that they're predicting. These narratives force characters and readers to question whether destiny controls us or if we control our own fate. In supernatural fiction, prophecy serves as narrative engine and thematic foundation, establishing endpoints while creating tension as characters struggle to escape or fulfill their destinies. Sophisticated stories recognize that prophecies rarely unfold as expected. Eve exemplifies this complexity. Ancient prophecies declare her the war child, fated to destroy all vampires, but reality proves more nuanced. The physical presentation reinforces the prophecy's power and horror. Ancient vampire prophecies inscribed in glyphs on human skin immediately convey age, sacrifice, and forbidden knowledge. This grotesque manifestation establishes authenticity, creates horror, and suggests the terrible price paid to obtain such knowledge. Eve initially appears protected by plot armor, the narrative convention that shields main characters from harm. Miraculous interventions serve as both plot convenience and metaphysical principle. Enemies become distracted at crucial moments, rescue arrives with impossible timing, and circumstances align in ways that define probability. Rather than lazy writing, these occurrences represent the universe ensuring prophetic fulfillment. However, we later discover the prophecy's true meaning. The vampires didn't want Eve dead. In her death, the old ones die with her. The prophecy's true power emerges not from a straightforward fulfillment, but from its subversion. The most compelling prophetic narratives establish expectations only to reveal dramatically different, outcomes. Future Eve's witness to humanity's potential fall represents this potential perfectly. Rather than destroying vampires, she observes their complete victory. The prophecy promising salvation becomes a harbinger of doom. This subversion works on multiple levels. It challenges characters' understanding of their roles, forces audiences to reconsider the story's direction, and explores whether prophecies describe inevitabilities or just possibilities. Ancient prophecies invite multiple interpretations, allowing for revelations that feel both surprising and, at the same time, inevitable. Now, when time travel enters the equation, possibilities expand exponentially, while paradoxes deepen. Future Eve's manipulation of the past exemplifies temporal intervention motivated by prophetic knowledge. Having witnessed the apocalyptic future, she attempts prevention through manipulation. Her decision to bring Hal to kill her infant self represents a desperate logic. If the prophecy leads to humanity's destruction, then preventing the prophetic figure's survival should prevent the catastrophic outcome, right? However, temporal intervention creates its own complications. While Hal fails to kill Infant Eve, his presence catalyzes other events, including preventing Tom from being used to kill innocents. The single pass time loop represents one of supernatural fiction's most sophisticated approaches to time travel. Unlike cyclical loops, where characters repeat events over and over again, single pass loops involve temporal intervention, creating new timelines while potentially fulfilling the very prophecies they seek to prevent. Future Eve's intervention ensures the events necessary for her destruction occurs exactly as they must, creating a closed causal loop where effect precedes cause. But there is a loop in time. It goes to the future, comes back, and then plays a new route. The structure appears in supernatural fiction in various forms. Time travelers trying to prevent disasters, inadvertently causing them, or prophetic warnings creating the conditions they warn against. The single-pass loop differs from repetitive loops by focusing on temporal intervention's irreversible nature. The combination raises questions about free will, determinism, and moral responsibility. If future events are knowable through prophecy, do characters possess genuine free will? When time travelers act on future knowledge, are they exercising agency or just fulfilling destiny? The moral implications become complex when considering future Eve's orchestrating her infant self's murder. From a utilitarian perspective, killing one child to prevent humanity's extinction seems justified. However, it is also a representation of a profound violation of natural order and personal identity. The most compelling prophetic time travel narratives recognize that this intervention inevitably produces unforeseen consequences. These serve multiple functions. They prevent mechanistic storytelling by introducing genuine unpredictability and by demonstrating that events have profound interconnectedness. Classic examples include Ray Bradbury's A Sound of Thunder, where prehistoric changes dramatically alter the present, and the Terminator franchise, where an AI's attempt to circumvent human rebellion creates conditions that enable its own construction. Voldemort's attempt to prevent the prophecy by killing infant Harry Potter instead creates the very chosen one that he feared. The Greek myth of Oedipus represents an early example. The prophecy about killing his father and marrying his mother is the driving force in fulfilling itself. The relationship between prophecy and time travel represents supernatural fiction's most sophisticated exploration of fate, free will, and moral responsibility. These narratives succeed not by providing easy answers, because they don't, but by dramatizing the complexities inherent in prophetic knowledge and temporal intervention. The horror and fascination lie in revealing how tightly bound we are to the consequences we can neither fully foresee nor entirely escape. Perhaps the most profound message is that the future is something that we are actively creating through our responses to our incomplete knowledge. Even if that comes from mystical prophecy or temporal travel, our choices are the mechanisms by which our destinies unfold. So let's move on to talk about the visual language of evil in supernatural fiction. When supernatural fiction needs to communicate absolute evil quickly and unmistakably, it often turns to Nazi iconography as visual shorthand. The Vampire Takeover Humanity demonstrates this technique perfectly, borrowing heavily from fascist aesthetics to establish a dystopian future. Black, red, and white banners flutter over concentration camps where humans wear identifying insignia, while uniformed vampire forces maintain rigid hierarchical control. This visual language immediately communicates to audiences that the future is unquestionably wrong. The power lies in its efficiency. Much like Star Wars used white armor and clean lines for the Empire versus earth tones and organic shapes for the rebels. The Nazi-inspired vampire future requires no exposition to establish its evil nature. The iconography carries decades of historical weight, making the vampire's victory feel horrifying in ways that resonate with real-world audiences. However, this borrowing functions as aesthetic shorthand rather than a meaningful political commentary. The vampire regime adopts the visual trappings of fascism without embodying the ideology in any deeper sense. This is common in supernatural fiction, using historically loaded imagery to quickly establish moral stakes without exploring the underlying political implications. The audience doesn't need to understand vampire political theory. The Nazi aesthetics immediately convey that human dignity has been destroyed. This distinction between visual shorthand and genuine commentary becomes crucial when we evaluate the narrative's intentions. By using Nazi imagery primarily for the aesthetic impact, rather than for any political analysis, the story avoids examining fascist ideology or drawing any parallels between vampire nature and authoritarian politics. Nazi visual language becomes so synonymous with evil in popular culture that it functions almost like a brand. It's immediately recognizable and emotionally powerful, but it's not necessarily connected to deeper understanding. The audience's visceral reaction to this imagery ensures that they will root for any character attempting to prevent this future, regardless of the moral complexity. When future Eve advocates murdering her infant self to prevent this outcome, the Nazi-presenting vampire regime provides moral justification. This effectiveness raises questions about responsibility when using loaded historical imagery. The visual shorthand serves the story's immediate needs, but risks trivializing actual historical atrocities by reducing them to aesthetic elements. Concentration camps become set pieces rather than sites of human suffering, and identifying insignia become costume design rather than markers of dehumanization. The aesthetic borrowing provides visual impact while avoiding the more challenging work of examining what this reveals about power, control, and the systematic dehumanization of the vulnerable. So be careful with it. Finally, I want to talk about suicide as a narrative tool in Being Human Season 5. This is a tough topic. The final season of Being Human presents suicide as a weaponized epidemic central to its supernatural antagonist's master plan. Season 5's treatment of self-harm as both plot device and thematical exploration raises important questions about media representation of suicide and its potential real-world implications. The character Hatch transforms suicide from a personal crisis into a supernatural weapon through manipulation rather than direct violence. His modus operandi centers on drawing power from deaths, making each suicide both a human tragedy and a literal strengthening of his evil power. This creates a disturbing dynamic where self-harm becomes widespread epidemic and demonic substance. His plan to create a UK-wide self-harm epidemic presents suicide as a contagion, a troubling metaphor that aligns with real-world concerns about suicide clustering and media influence. Episode 5's use of Filter's song, "Hey Man, Nice Shot," is the show's most explicit engagement with suicide's cultural mythology. The song, written about R. Bud Dwyer's public suicide and often associated with Kurt Cobain's death, carries heavy cultural baggage about suicide as spectacle. By incorporating this track, the series acknowledges that suicide has been mythologized in popular culture, while simultaneously risking perpetuating those same dangerous romanticizations. The most concerning aspect lies in this potential romanticization of self-destruction. Characters like Mitchell, who in previous seasons viewed their deaths as noble sacrifices to protect others, embody a dangerous framework that presents suicide as a heroic resolution. When Mitchell realizes that he will always be a villain and the world will be better off without him, the series risks presenting suicide as a rational, even noble response to moral complexity. This transforms suicide from a mental health crisis into a dramatic climax, potentially glamorizing what is fundamentally tragedy rooted in treatable psychological distress. Now, the supernatural context creates a fantasy framework that may make suicide seem like a viable solution to overwhelming real-world problems, or not real-world problems, but like fantasy-created problems for vulnerable viewers. It's crucial to recognize that suicide is neither romantic nor glamorous. It stems from treatable mental health conditions, not from being inherently monstrous or a cosmic necessity. Mental health struggles, however overwhelming, are treatable conditions requiring professional support. They're not supernatural curses requiring ultimate solutions. The show's supernatural framework creates dangerous distance from suicide as a public health crisis. Help is available, effective treatments exist, and recovery is possible. While the series creates compelling television exploring themes of monstrosity, sacrifice, and redemption, it risks perpetuating harmful myths about suicide as a romantic or noble gesture. For viewers who are struggling with suicidal thoughts, these narrative frameworks may prove more harmful than helpful, potentially reinforcing dangerous thought patterns rather than encouraging help-seeking behavior. Now, Hatch remains clearly villainous, and every suicide he instigates is treated as a tragedy, preventing the show from crossing into what I think is truly harmful territory. However, effective storytelling about suicide requires careful balance between dramatic impact and responsible representation, acknowledging mental health realities while avoiding romanticization that might harm vulnerable audiences. So, if you like lycanthropes, like, share, and subscribe. Contribute your thoughts and additional observations in the comments below. Let me know what I missed or what you noticed. Next, I plan on discussing She-Wolf, The Last Sentinel. It was originally titled Lobo from 2008. Keep your eye on the moon, a silver bullet in the chamber, and we'll see you back next episode.